Attorney General Jeff Sessions appeared for 5 hours in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee today. All the while, Robert Mueller and his team continued their investigation of their own. Also on Capitol Hill today, NBC News confirms Senate Intelligence Committee staffers have interviewed former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski on the Russia investigation. With us now, our legal panel here to talk about it tonight, Joe Weinbanks, former Assistant Watergate Special Counsel and an MSNBC legal analyst, and Ken Dilanian, NBC News intelligence and national security reporter. So, Ken, you'll get the first one tonight. What was your takeaway from soup to nuts, all of the Sessions testimony, including some of the non-answers?
Well, Brian, I was first struck that Jeff Sessions' story seems to have evolved once again about whether he had substantive conversations with any Russians, with particularly Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. You know, don't forget, he started out saying to the Senate committee that he had no contacts with Russians. He then changed the story to, yes, I did have contacts, but we didn't have any substantive discussions about the campaign. Today, he seemed to open the door. He said he couldn't recall, couldn't rule out that he had some discussions about foreign policy issues, which, as Senator Al Franken pointed out, can be campaign issues. So that was an interesting takeaway. The other thing that struck me is that Jeff Sessions was just simply unwilling to talk about his discussions with the president, and he wouldn't answer the question about whether President Trump told him that he fired FBI Director James Comey in order to get rid of the Russia investigation. Now, I understand, you know, that he is trying to reserve the right to assert executive privilege, but it seems to me he could have found a way to communicate to Congress in some fashion that President Trump didn't make that inappropriate request or statement in his presence, and he wasn't able to do that today, Brian.
Ken, in plain English, it was just so weird. He was a talking point behind, because you remember when the story came out, we were running around. Comey just got fired. And when we looked at the statement, the why seemed to be he was mean to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and very few people believed that at the time, Brian, and it quickly became inoperable when he told Lester Holt, obviously, as you said before, that Russia was on his mind when he fired Donald Trump. So it was so strange to hear Jeff Sessions, bringing that up again today and saying people really don't understand how badly Comey blew the Hillary Clinton thing. But, you know, Donald Trump, with his tweet this morning, eviscerated that argument again by making it clear that, you know, he thought that Comey was protecting Hillary Clinton. So, you know, if Mueller is looking at the, you know, whether Donald Trump put up a bogus story about the Comey firing, Donald Trump didn't help himself with that tweet today.
Okay, Counselor, all these claims of confidentiality for his conversations with the President of the United States made by the Attorney General, can he do that? And can he be compelled, all the times he decided to take the pitch and step out of the batter's box, can he be compelled to answer in some other forum?
Well, first, let me say I agree completely with what Ken said on all of your questions in the first part. And yes, he can be compelled, but the question is, will he? And the answer to that is probably not, because the Republicans control the committee, and they are not likely to try to force him. He cannot sort of pretend to be claiming executive privilege. Only the president can do that. And the president has not done that. And as you pointed out, that would make him look guilty. So he doesn't want to do that. And Sessions is just sort of pretending like, well, I have to protect my right to not answer the questions. And that's wrong. That is just wrong. And if they were discussing anything that was criminal, which would include a false reason for firing Comey, then he can't do it. That would be invalid.
Ken Dilanian, if you're Mueller, if you're either one of the Hill committees, what does a conversation with Corey Lewandowski get you? Remind us all the way that spreads out in fragments over all these stories that have become central to the Russia issue.
Right, Ryan. Corey Lewandowski was the campaign manager. He was fired in June, but he's maintained a relationship with the Trump organization, and he's opened a rather successful lobbying operation in Washington based on his access to Donald Trump and his people. So he knows a lot. Now, we don't know exactly what they were talking to him about. We don't know why Robert Mueller might be interested in him. And to me, what that underscores is, we think we know quite a bit about these investigations because we're constantly hearing about different witnesses and documents, but there's really so much that we don't know. There's so much evidence that Robert Mueller is amassing that we have no idea about, so many angles that he's pursuing that we just don't have visibility on, and there's going to come a day when it will be revealed, and it's going to be a fascinating day, Ryan.
Jill, what do you make of all the available tea leaves on the Mueller investigation? I was stunned that we learned allegedly topics and questions during their session with Sean Spicer. But I always ask you, knowing what you know, where do you think we are?
I think we're proceeding at a good clip and that we're going to have to be patient. Everyone keeps asking me, why is it taking so long? And I keep pointing out it's only been 5 months since Mueller was appointed, and it takes a long time to develop a case. As you just said, we don't know everything that Mueller knows. We don't know what angles he's pursuing because witness A may have said something that he wants to confirm with Lewandowski or with Sean Spicer. And so we just have to be patient to find out how all the pieces fit together in this puzzle. And that's what it's going to take, is all of the pieces being put together, because you really need a strong case if you're going to proceed against the president. And you don't want to leave any piece out of place.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.